So 200 years ago today, or this last week, the missionaries at Paihia, the mission station led by Henry Williams, began to build a ship on the beach at Paihia. And it was the ship that would become the Herald. And there had been since the beginning of the mission in 1814, there had been a mission ship. Samuel Marsden, finding it difficult to get ships to go to New Zealand at that time, actually bought a ship. He bought the Active. But after 10 years of working for the mission, it was being sold, or it was needing to be sold. And so the mission was again relying on the shipping to bring supplies from Australia. And there's a couple of issues with that. The first one is that often the goods would come damaged, as in water damaged, either because they were stored on deck, or they didn't, wasn't being cared for, or even in just the unloading of the goods into small boats and being rowed across from Kororareka which is now modern day Russell, across to Paihia. But probably more important and more significant for Henry Williams was that having their supplies come and them being dependent on the sailors, on the shipping, as he called it, actually this brought him into contact with the sea captains and sailors, which he found to be detrimental to the mission. This is what he said: "I am fully sensible that there cannot exist a greater bane to the mission, to ourselves and the natives, than their intercourse with the shipping which put into the Bay of Islands. It is a source of considerable regret to me whenever duty requires me to go on board any vessel, for perhaps out of all the vessels moving on the waters, there are none to be compared with them for debauchery and blasphemy." This is Henry Williams. He's been a seaman, of course. He was a lieutenant in the Royal Navy during the Napoleonic Wars, so he's quite used to sailors and such like. So he had a very low opinion of the... but also because Maori saw the example of the missionaries and compared it to the example of the Europeans who are across the bay at Kororareka. And he saw that as a real problem. One of their strategies was to say, we don't have anything to do with them. But of course they had to, because they got their supplies from them. And actually they had to be gracious for it, because the sea captains didn't have to bring the supplies, but they did it out of the goodness of their heart. So Henry Williams, he was determined that actually another solution needed to be found, but also meant that a lot of the shipping didn't travel down the coast to where they wanted to expand and explore, like down to the Bay of Island, to the Bay of Plenty, and down the coast to Thames and to Tauranga. So Henry's solution was to build a boat. He had William Hall, who was one of the early missionaries across at Rangiahoa. He had done a crash course in shipbuilding, so he drew up plans. He'd already built a couple of smaller sort of little dinghy-type boats, but this is something considerably bigger. There was a number of other carpenters around. There was William Pucky Sr. and his son, William Pucky. There was a carpenter who had jumped boat as it sailed off to England. He found himself left behind. Oh, well, he wanted to be left behind. And then there was a young man, Gilbert Meyer, who would end up being the captain of the Herald. He was only a 25-year-old man, and he married William Pucky's sister, Elizabeth, in the end. So they decided that they would get to and build a schooner. It was going to be 55 tons. 60 feet by 15 feet. Does that make sense to any of you? Because I had to move it into metrics, into 18 metres by 4.5 metres, which I think is about the dimensions of my townhouse. So it's not a very big boat. It was only half the size of the Active, which was 110 tons. Schooner, I don't know actually too much. I think it's about the rigging. And here's a picture from a New Zealand stamp of the Herald that was built in the Bay of Islands by the missionaries. Well, I'm amazed by the sheer resourcefulness of the missionaries. To think, well, let's build a boat, let's build our own ship. If we haven't got one, let's build one. That's just given the state of the mission and how they barely had houses for themselves. It's like saying we need to travel from Auckland to Wellington. Let's build a car. How does this happen? Yeah. But also just the courage, because when they did eventually launch the ship, the whole intention was to sail it across the Tasman to New South Wales. I mean, I might build a little dinghy and paddle around the Bay of Islands. If it sank, I could kind of swim to shore, I hope. But it's a different thing when you're in the middle of the Tasman Sea in a boat that you've built. And almost all the 6 or 7 Europeans who were involved with building this thing, along with the Maori who helped, they all got in that boat on its maiden voyage and sailed to New South Wales and back. I just think that shows just courage and confidence, which I help. Well, the challenge, of course, was, well, here you are, you're on the beach at Paihia. How do you do it? You got to, well, where's the timber going to come from? Now, fortunately, Maori, they thought it was a great idea. The local Maori chiefs, they were fully supportive. So they were happy to sell timber to the mission. These were Maori from the Kawa area. Now, I drove through there just recently. I think a lot of that land's been drained. There's a lot of swamps. They had to engage 4 European men as well as pay for the timber and such like, and Maori to cut the timber down, get it to the sea, and then to raft it around the coast to Paihia. But of course, you've got these big tree trunks. They all have to be cut into planks. That's the dig the pit with one person below, and you're sawing the planks of wood. This all cost money. None of this came free. In fact, the mission had the policy of never doing it for free, because they wanted to maintain their independence from Maori, who would, if they'd given it for free, then they would claim ownership of it. So they had, so the mission had to pay for it. And again, Samuel Marsden came into his own. He out of his own private funds, covered the cost of the building of the ship. Cost £250 of the money in those days. He did sell the active for £2,000. That was twice the size. So it was actually quite economical to build your own boat with timber in New Zealand rather than buy one in New South Wales and sail it across. Now, Henry Williams thought that it would take 4 months to complete the task. That's what he told the CMS. That sounds like a grand design idea, really, because it ended up taking 20 months. It didn't. So it began now. So this is 1824. We're now 2024. Well, it didn't. They didn't sail till February 1826. So almost 2 years time. Gilbert Meyer became the captain. Henry Williams was the commodore. They had 3 Maori men and 3 Maori boys as crew, along with 2 English seamen. And then the ones who built the ship, William Fairburn, who was called the supercargo. William Pucky was the young man. In his, I think he might have been about 18 or 19. He was the first mate. Mr. and Mrs. Pucky Sr. and their daughter, they were on board, as well as one of the carpenters that helped who needed medical attention. A Maori chief, we're not named who he is, and Henry Williams. Well, I think they're pretty bold. Now, the Herald, it made 4 voyages to Sydney and 4 voyages to the Bay of Plenty and 3 to the Hokianga Harbour before it was wrecked on trying to cross the Hokianga Heads in 1828. So it took almost 2 years to build. It sailed for 2 years and then it was wrecked. So such is the difficulties of mission life. They replaced the Herald with another boat called the Active in 1830. This one was actually sailed out from England. It had been purchased in England and sailed out. Anyway, that's my story of 200 years ago today.